Hello, everyone. Welcome to our virtual engineering open house. Today we are having computer science and engineering faculty panel. My name is Luz Sandoval Manjarres, and I'm an academic advisor with the School of Engineering. This is one event of a series of events to help welcome second year undergraduate students into the School of Engineering. During their first year, students see their Bobcat Advisor in the Bobcat Advising Center, and at the completion of their first year, students then transition to their declared major advisor. We hope that you can join us with our upcoming events this week and next week. This session will be recorded, so if you need to go back to it, we will be posting it on our engineering advising website. If you have questions throughout the session, please feel free to ask the questions through the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. Today we have one faculty panelist joining us, Professor Estefano Carden. Thank you for joining us. I will be facilitating and asking the questions. And if we can start off, can you please tell us about yourself and why did you choose to come to teach at UC.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. I chose to come to UC back in 2006. That's when I applied, and I started in 2007 because I saw a job ad that caught my attention. And the job ad said, new university being just established in California, looking for someone doing research in robot algorithms. And I think there are very few people that would describe themselves as doing research in robot algorithms. So it looked like they were really looking for me. And this is how I sent my application. I, of course, was aware that UC was opening a new campus that was actually known since a while. And the university where I graduated as an undergraduate had, actually the university where I did all my education, had an exchange program with UC. So I was very familiar with the system and with the reputation. So that is what caught my attention, and how I ended up at UC.
Thank you. And if you feel comfortable, can you share about your undergraduate education?
Yes, I did everything in electrical engineering and computer science. And I think even earlier, I attended a technical high school where I became a computer programmer. That was actually not the school meant for people to go to college, but that's what I did anyways. I attended a combined BS MS degree in electrical engineering and computer science. And in my last year, when I was working to my master's thesis, I came to hang around a lot with PhD students because we were in the same lab, became interested in moving forward. And so I did also my PhD in electrical engineering and computer science. I did all my education at the University of Padua in Italy, which is an interesting thing because UC is 15 years old or so. University of Padua next year will be 800 years old. So there is quite some difference in how long they've been around. And yeah, so I did all of my education in electrical engineering and computer science, and I became interested in robotics, which is what I do most of the time now when I was finishing up, when I was doing my master thesis.
Well, thank you for joining us at UC and helping start this university.
It's been a pleasure.
Could you tell us more about the CSE department and kind of like what are some of the classes students take and what do they learn?
Absolutely. So the CSE department and the CSE program, as probably most of the attendees know, is the largest in the School of Engineering. I saw the new numbers this morning for the new year. I think we have 1,080 students. And I think the fact that we have so many students is because computer science professions are in high demand, despite the fact that there was always a fear that those jobs could be outsourced. That is not the case. Students in computer science and engineering pursuing the BS and CSE, they go through a very rigorous preparation that should be clear. Computer science is not web design, and it's not only programming. It's about problem solving, and it's about the ideas of computation. So there is a mix of classes where students get rigorous theoretical preparation. I'm thinking, for example, to a CSE 100, data structure and algorithms, which is actually a second year class, which is fundamental for anyone who wants to claim to be a computer scientist. But also there are a number of classes where the approach is much more hands-on, and those are many of the specialization classes that come later on in the junior and senior year. And I think students need to be proficient in both, because very often students want to get involved in projects and do cool demos, and that is, everyone wants to do a cool demo and have an application, but any cool demo rests upon a very solid understanding of the problem, and so theory and practice go absolutely hand in hand together in our curriculum. I would also like to outline one thing, which is a feature that all students to graduate, they have to take CSE 120 software engineering in their last year. And that is a very nice class where they work on a specific problem given by industry. So it's not just an academic exercise, but they are solving a challenge which was brought in by industrial partners that we recruit. And I think that that is not true necessarily true in all computer science departments in the nation. So this is a very nice feature that we have implemented here.
What are some good academic behaviors for students to be successful in their engineering and their CSE courses?
Yes, and I think that probably what I say for CSE applies to engineering and vice versa. I think it's essential. There are a few things that I see in the very successful students. First one is go to class. It may seem as absurd to say, but it's not. Unfortunately, I do see that many students tend not to come, which is a shame because there is an obvious correlation between attending classes and being successful. It is true that you can probably access all the material anyways, but being part of a community, attending class, the interactions you have with the fellow students before and after a lecture, exchanging ideas about problems that you may be solving and so on and so forth, is absolutely essential. And the other part, I think, is that attending classes is just the beginning. And I believe that especially for a lot of the topics we cover in computer science, it is necessary to spend time outside class, probably going after your own sources. We live in a world where all the knowledge is at our fingertips, just one Google search away. So I think that it is also essential to realize that you cannot really be exposed to everything you need to know in class. But we also have the luck these days to be able to get additional information. And so somehow you have to realize how to self-teach the things you cannot be taught in class, and identify what are your weaknesses, and try to be proactive about filling those gaps. So absolutely, going to class is essential, but more important is what you do after class, and how much self-initiative you put in identifying what are your weak spots, and then looking for help. You can find your answers on the web. You can approach an advisor. You can approach other students. You can go to office hours, approach a TA. And I mean, there are many ways to go about it.
Do you know of any sources where students can get this extra practice? Maybe are you aware of any online sources that might be available for them?
I think that when it comes to programming, for example, there are countless online coding academies that you just can go after. There are the obvious, I would call them big box websites where you can get access to courses. There are thriving online communities where people can subscribe, get access to coding context, or getting help. I think it's really, there are so many that you really have to find something that is tailored to your specific needs. But it's absolutely no scarcity of those.
And what advice do you give students that are doing well versus students that might be having some academic difficulty in their courses, specifically their CSE courses?
Yes, so for students that are doing well, I think don't be happy because you're doing well, challenge yourself. I think that oftentimes what we see, and these are things we hear from our students, that after they graduate, they go for jobs. Very often they are asked the question, okay, tell us some interesting projects you did. And those are not necessarily the projects you did at school as part of coursework. This could be something that you did on your own. So if you really feel that it comes Wednesday afternoon and you're done for the week and you feel comfortable, try working out your own extra coding project and so on. Those will be valuable later on. And there are so many things you can do these days. You can write an app, you can write a video game, whatever tailors to your specific interests. For the students that, on the contrary, may be a little bit having some difficulties, I think that the most important thing is that when you realize that you are somehow falling behind, you seek help immediately. And the reason is that almost everything we do is very incremental. What you learn next week builds upon what you learn this week. And if you start to fall behind, then things will get just worse and worse. So don't wait too much. Get help as soon as possible to be back on track as soon as possible. I cannot overemphasize the importance of practice in anything we do in computer science, whether it is programming or something more theoretical. Nothing can substitute the knowledge you gain by doing things as opposed to sitting. Sitting and listening is important. It's the beginning, but then you have to spend significant time just by doing things on your own.
Thank you for that. Can you talk a little bit about your research interest and how can students do research?
Yes, so as I alluded to in the beginning, my area of research is robotics. I became interested in robotics, and when I was doing my master thesis, robotics is a broad field. It spans from mechanical engineering, I would say, all the way to cognitive science. Because a robot has a body, if you want to put this kind of image like a human, and has a brain as well. And so what we do in my lab, we mostly focus on the brain, which is to say that we focus on software development and algorithmic issues to solve robotics problems. I'm particularly interested in decision-making problems. So a robot, of course, has many subcomponents. One of them is perception, for example, making sense of the information that comes through the sensors. Very important, but it's not what we do. Our focus is mostly on decision making, which is essentially that if you have a long-term mission, like a robot has to assemble an engine or get into a room and take something and take it out, how do you organize your actions in a sequential way so that you can achieve these complex behaviors to achieve these goals? And this in spite of the fact that the world is unpredictable. There are always disturbances and things you don't anticipate. So your plan has to be sophisticated enough and include contingencies to deal with those. And this is eminently a computer science problem. That's most of what I do. And I'd like to outline, this is what I do with my PhD students. There is no research in any computer science lab, I believe, without the valuable help of graduate students. And I thought maybe there was a second part of your question I forgot.
How can students conduct research? Are you seeing
Yeah, yes, I think that this is one of the advantages of being an institution which is still relatively small. I think that first of all, undergraduate research is one of the core features that we advertise, and I think we are true to our mission with regard to that. Identify a faculty member who does something which is of interest to you. All computer science faculty, and this is true not only in computer science actually, have an active research program. So just Google their name, figure out what they do in terms of research, and best thing is take a class, impress your instructor by doing well, and then you can approach them later on and ask if there are opportunities. I very often get asked by lower division students, how can I get involved? And it is unfortunately too that it's not that simple to get involved earlier on, because very often there are many things you need to know before you can be embedded in a research lab. But don't be shy, and even if you are initially told that maybe it's too early, you can be told what are the skills you have to acquire in order to be competitive later on. So I think that the first thing is figure out what professors do, approach someone who is doing something you're interested in, and then don't be shy, go ahead and ask.
Thank you for that. And I guess talking about technical electives and classes, what classes should students take if they're interested in robotics?
Yes, so obviously the robotics class I teach, CSE 180, is important, but it's also true that I've also taken students in my lab that had not taken that. It is fundamental for anything within the lab to have a strong programming background. So having taken CSE 165 into the object-oriented programming is important, if possible. With the new restructuring of the computer science curriculum, with the new classes, so CSE 22 and 24, I think those will prepare students very rigorously, and it's not just passing the classes, it's mastering the content. And then, as I said earlier, CSE 100, algorithm design and analysis, that is an essential class for any computer science student. So those are the classes I always look at when students apply for position in the lab. And the other part, which is true for robotics, but I think is true for a lot of the upper division classes, is that you need to have a strong math background. And in particular, linear algebra and probability are extremely important. So your math 32 is really something that you should pay attention to. A lot of students are interested in machine learning. Well, everything in machine learning these days is based, well, not everything, let's say a large fraction of what is done in machine learning is based on understanding probability very well. So those are fundamental classes that you really have to excel at.
That's awesome. Thank you. So talking about technical electives, what advice would you give for students that might be taking some CSE upper division courses, and what would be a good course load?
As many as you can while being able to excel. Well, I think that the ideal course load, I think is very personal. I think that we do have a course plan that allows you to graduate in 4 years, and I think that that is doable. Doesn't mean that everyone has to go at that pace. And more than the ideal course load, I think that maybe it's worthwhile spending an extra semester and making sure that you have not necessarily a better GPA, because employers will look at GPAs, the GPA up to a point. Make sure that you're better prepared so that you can be successful when you go to a coding interview and one of those recruiting events. So do less things and do them well is better than doing many and being wishy-washy.
Could you explain how would students benefit from internships or research?
Yes, solving a relevant problem. Okay, I think that we all have this tendency that of course I can build a toy problem for myself if I want to become better at something, but that's not how the real world works, right? Very often a customer or an employer will come with given specifications and you will have to work with those. So I think that getting into an internship, could be an industry or into a lab, you get to work on something which is given to you, and you can't customize it to your specific abilities. So you will have to challenge yourself. It's a way to look into how your future employment could look like. Also develop those soft skills that we don't necessarily teach at school. I mean, there is a reason why you attend university first and then you go for a job afterwards. So I guess that if there is a chance for an internship or either in industry or in a research lab, students should absolutely go for it, because it complements and makes you much more competitive when later on you apply for a job. I think it also is useful to figure out what you like and what you don't, because I mean the job field is so wide that you will have a chance to better understand where you thrive or where you perhaps don't want to go.
Any advice for students that might still I mean, so second year students, right? They're still early in their college career, but they are preparing, right, for graduation. For students that might be thinking of either graduate school or going right into the field, how should they decide what is best for them?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think that maybe in the second year, if you already know whether you want to go in one path or the other, that's great. The sooner you make up your mind, the better. Oftentimes, people maybe decide only later that they want to go for grad school. I will say that if you want to go for grad school, be it a master or a PhD degree, I think that it would be worthwhile investing more in fundamental classes and maybe taking an extra math class because those will be probably more valuable if you go to grad school. Maybe not necessarily just a math class, could also be maybe a computer science class, which is more of theoretical flavor. If on the contrary, you aim to enter the job market, then maybe you can focus a little bit more on those hands-on classes that will teach you valuable experiences for your job interviews. So, I mean, I think the sooner you make up your mind, the better. And that should really define the way you pick your classes in your third or fourth year.
And with fall being remote, how can students get involved in internships? Or how can they start building up the resume as well?
Yes, so we live an interesting situation. I think that computer science students probably are the students that are less at a disadvantage in this situation, in the sense that for those that are not interested or involved in a project that necessitates access to infrastructures which are on campus only, I'm thinking about a specific piece of hardware or stuff like that, then really where you are located doesn't really matter. And so I have a student who is doing research with me this semester. We Zoom every now and then. We work on Teams, and that I think is not being any different than if we were on campus. So I think that it's still possible. I think it's a matter of being proactive. Of course, I mean, if you really want to do something that assume access to certain resources which are on campus, this is not the right moment. But I would say the overwhelming majority of the projects are software only, and so really you can do them from wherever.
Are there any clubs or organizations that you might be aware of that CSE students should be taking advantage of or getting involved in?
Okay, so I know there are some associations on campus. I'm not as involved. I know that the ACM is active on campus. I'm mentioning the ACM just because I think I got a message the other way. And that's one of the obvious associations to get involved with. I have to admit, I'm not up to speed with what they do on a regular basis, so it's my fault for not having kept up to date. The IEEE as well. And I think there are also a lot of associations that are these days virtual, where you can sign up irrespective of where you are. So again, as I said earlier, it's just a matter of figuring out what you're interested in, and then the opportunities abound. I mean, they organize, hackathons, coding contests, and so on and so forth. Those are great things. They're fun, and you learn. I would absolutely support students to take part in those activities.
Oh, thank you, and I know that you have a lot going on too. The next question is, if students need help in your courses and maybe have a question, is there anything you recommend for students to be prepared prior to attending office hours?
Yes, well, the first thing I would say is attend office hours. It always surprises me how few students take advantage of this opportunity. And my opinion is extremely valuable. You have a chance to sit there with your professor and ask questions, and those are the questions you answered. And so I still think that a lot of students are not taking enough advantage of this opportunity. Be also mindful that, with some classes, there may be one professor and 300 students, so not everyone can get unconditional half an hour of their time. So be very specific about what you don't understand. One of my TAs told me the other day, he said, you know, whenever a student comes to me and says, I don't get it, the discussion ends there. You have to be specific. What are you trying to do? How did you get stuck? So really, typically go to office hours after having worked on your own. Bring everything you have, you know, your scrap paper or, you know, whatever you did that shows, or, you know, where you can reconstruct what are your challenges. But really, you know, being specific about what your challenges are, because if you just come and have a generic statement of the type, I don't understand, and it's something very broad, then it's very difficult to nail down what the problem is.
Well, thank you for taking time and helping students. What kind of careers can students go by pursuing a CSE degree?
I think, okay, let's answer in two ways. I think that if I look at the CSE alumni I've kept in touch with, they've gone everywhere. I think some of them ended up in the big companies in the Silicon Valley. Some are working for regional players. Some have started their own businesses. Some went to grad school. Some also changed completely sector because they realized that perhaps computer science was not their career. So from that point of view, I think we should be happy that our students are basically finding a lot of different employment opportunities. If we somehow step a bit away from our UC Merced students and we think about the computer science graduate in general, I think we can, you know, the future is uncertain on many counts, but I think no one can think about the future without computation. And so it goes with that, saying that we have come to depend on let's call it information technology, even though perhaps it's not a term I really like a lot. But we have come to depend on computing in all aspects of life. And this means that there will be needs for computer science graduates in many different areas, be it developing new systems, maintaining them, training users. So I think that the opportunities are endless. And the other thing which is obvious is that computer science naturally lends itself to entrepreneurship. And so I also, you know, like to encourage students to think about, you know, maybe they can start their own job or create their own opportunity with computer science, with the computer science education.
Thank you. And talking more about your career, what have been some challenges that you have faced?
Well, I think there is one challenge which is perennial for me, and it will be perennial for all graduates, which is that you can never assume you know. This field changes continuously, and you have to make a point that lifelong learning is not just an expression; it's going to be the reality, and you have to keep up to date with all the new developments. A lot of the things I teach today, especially when it comes to robotics, did not even exist when I graduated, and I had to pick them up afterwards. So that is a challenge for everyone. I also have to acknowledge when I graduated with my master's degree, there were way less things to know. Students these days have actually to be much more proficient on a broader range of skills. And so I think that part of the struggle every day is to say, okay, I have a limited amount of time. How do I decide what to read among all the things I should know and I don't know enough? And this is something that happens to me. I think happens to any academic, but I think it happens to anyone who has a degree in this field, because it just changes continuously.
So do you think that a master's degree is necessary for the industry?
Well, this is a very tricky question. It can get me in trouble depending on how I answer.
Whatever you can answer.
No, I think I encourage students to go to grad school. That is not to say that you cannot be successful and have a rewarding professional life without a master's degree or a PhD degree for that matter. But I think that oftentimes I'm in touch with alumni who say, well, you know what, in retrospect, perhaps if I had a graduate degree, I would have had more opportunities on my for my career development. I would have been able to embark on more responsibilities and so on. That being said, I have come to know people that run very successful businesses, and I would say they have a thriving professional life, and they have a bachelor degree only. I think it depends really what you want to do. It should be, however, known that if you are aiming at certain jobs for some big companies and whatnot, you'll be competing with a lot of people that have graduate degrees. So by not having it, you put yourself at a disadvantage.
So is there any way for students to reach out to you or to any other faculty members that they might be interested in the research? How should they approach you if they are not necessarily taking your classes, or are taking your classes, but they might not have questions specifically for the class?
Yes, I think that there are a few things you can do to make your email more, in this world we live in, the first approach is going to be an email, right? If we were 2 semesters ago, someone would just knock at the door in the office, but these days it's different. I think, but irrespective of whether you're approaching a professor or by email or in person, I think the first thing is to really get an idea about what this person is doing so that you can really come up with questions that are tailored to the specific project or specific enterprises that are going on in the lab. And also, I think this is true for everyone, go straight to the point. I mean, I don't know how many emails we all receive every day. I think that the answer is too many for everyone. And so just go straight to the point and show that you're not just going there without knowing really what you want, but you have done your homework before. You have figured out what are the projects, if it is a good match, and so on and so forth. I every day I get emails from prospective PhD students that are interested in things I'm not even remotely related to. Obviously, those emails don't even get an answer because they're just flooding other people's inboxes, and that's not the way to go.
What kind of material should students have an understanding before they start taking CSE 100? Because that's kind of like their first upper division course in CSE.
There is a very nice chain of prerequisites we have put in place, and that's not a random or an evil way to offer put together by faculty to keep students out of CSE 100. Make sure you satisfy all the prerequisites and hopefully you pass with a decent grade. If you satisfy all these prerequisites by passing with a C, there may be a problem there. And that is the reason why we have those prerequisites, because you need all of that. So by the same token, when we get these requests for a waiver of prerequisites and whatnot, those are very often turned down, and there is a reason, because you need that knowledge. So just make sure that you really have your math in order, and you have a solid understanding of data structures and everything that comes before, because everything is needed. So if you fulfill the requirements, the long chain of prerequisites we have put in place, we're good to go.
And talking about the prerequisite, I know major change requirements are changing. Can you talk a little bit about maybe the new courses that are going to be integrated for CSE?
Yes, so this will not affect students in the second year because it's rolling in for first year students right now. But essentially what is happening is that we are replacing 20 and 21, which were these two unit classes that were taken in the first year. And those are going away. There is a new class, CSE 22, which is being offered for the first time this semester, which in essence is the combination of 20 and 21 in one semester. And there's also a different language. We're switching to Python. And truth to be told, I think that the new 22 is 2021 plus something. We're trying to make it a little bit more training about computational thinking and less about the mechanics of the programming language that you're learning to train those skills. And then next semester, there is a new class that rolls, which is CSE 24, for which 22 is a prerequisite, unsurprisingly. And that, on the contrary, is a deep dive into programming languages. So this will affect the freshman students this year. And then from that point onwards, everything continues as before. So you go through the 30, 31, and so on. We have rolled out this change in a way that it only affects those two classes. Everything else in terms of the math classes and so on and so forth remains the same. I have a student in my class that yesterday asked me if it would be a good idea. This is a second year student taking a first year class. If it would be a good idea, after having taken 20 and 21 last year, to perhaps wait and catch up with the new 22 and 24. And yeah, in principle, I think it would be, I think we're doing that because we think we're going to prepare students better. But I wouldn't support that because it would mean slowing down your path to graduation significantly. So I think that if you started with the old pathway, keep going that way. It is understood that these changes will affect only future students, so you're not at a disadvantage by continuing with the previous path.
Thank you for that, and because sometimes it can be confusion with the new courses. And we're already going to our last questions. What are some resources that you recommend UC Nurses students utilize? Any like tutoring services that you might be aware of, or any other resources?
Yeah, for me, I know tutoring services. I've heard students being happy with PALS. I don't know enough about it, but I'm just telling you what I hear. To me, it appears again that the students are not taking enough advantage of office hours, either with the instructors or with the TAs as well. If something is not clear and you have a hard time getting in touch with the professor, the TAs are there as well. All the TAs have office hours. And to me, that is the easiest and the most underutilized resource at UC Merced, as far as I can see from my point of view.
And what are some skills that maybe future employers are looking for, and how can students make themselves more competitive if applying to jobs?
So there's one thing that I like this question because it brings up a point that I think is often underestimated by students while they are still in school. So I'm a little bit generalizing now, but students tend to complain, oh, the class is too difficult. That is something. And then we are in touch with some of the students that they are in their last semester, they're going for their first job interviews, or I kept in touch with some of the students that later on got jobs. And the feedback we have, on the contrary, tends to be the opposite, which is, I wish I was challenged more in college. Okay, because those interviews may be very, very competitive. And so cannot be overemphasized the importance of coding. Okay, times and again, if you're really aiming to those jobs that a lot of students may be looking at, a significant part of the interview will be about testing your coding skills. And very often, a significant part of the interview is also about testing understanding of algorithms that you are gonna get in CSE 100 or CSE 30. So those are really the two parts where you should strive to make sure you excel. And oftentimes that will mean perhaps doing programming challenges or doing hackathons or whatnot, which are beyond what you do in class. But I would just like to reiterate, there's one student that graduated a couple of years back kept in touch with him. I think he was working at the national lab at a certain point. That was his first job. And he was happy, but he was also saying, I wish I was challenged more in college, because I would have been more successful, and I would have, it would have been better for my job.
Can you talk about data science, and which CSE courses would you recommend for students who are interested in this area?
Yes, very good. I think that, yeah, data science is one of the hot topics of the moment. There is no data science degree right now at UC Merced, even though that may change in the future, who knows. But if you are a CSE major and you're interested in that route, I think that the obvious thing would be to make sure that you take machine learning, which is a upper division, typically senior year class. It wouldn't be a bad idea if you took AI as well. Even though you will not necessarily go into nitty-gritty details of data science, you will learn a lot of those skills that are needed. So those would be the two classes. Data science is also intrinsically related, very often is data science is related to big data. So taking also CSE 111 databases or won't hurt. And CSE 177, I think, which is databases implementation. And that would be also a useful class. But if you really have to pick only one, go with machine learning.
Thank you for that. What are some areas in the industry that might be trending in CSE, or what are some of the most popular careers that CSE students could potentially go into that you've noticed?
Well, yeah. Data science that you just mentioned is one of the areas that gets mentioned a lot. And anything AI, artificial intelligence related, has a lot of traction. AI these days has broadened its meaning and it has come to mean a lot of things. There is, of course, enormous interest in IoT, the Internet of Things. So in that case, students that may have maybe more of an interest for embedded systems or issues that are more related to hardware could find opportunities there. Those are, areas where you see a lot of job ads coming out these days. In general, machine learning is the topic of the moment. And it has become so broad that it means a lot of different things to different people. If you want to do robotics these days, you have to know machine learning as well. So I think there are a lot of opportunities. This is not to diminish the importance of more traditional areas because these complex systems have a lot of subcomponents. So it's not that any area is dying out anytime soon. I'm just saying that those are probably the ones where there is more imbalance between job availability and graduates. So perhaps there is more advertising to get the graduates in those domains.
Thank you. And now we're going to go to our last question unless we get more Q&A. But what is some advice you would give students starting their second year?
You're still investing in the sense that perhaps it's still not obvious that all the foundational classes you're taking are useful. You may still be under the impression of, oh, why do I still have to take yet another theoretical class? And I understand the frustration, but you're investing in the sense that you're building the foundation such that later on, when you move on to the upper division classes, and then you have these, hopefully semester-long projects or more substantial projects where you have the magic cool demo where you do something. Then you're able to do the cool demo. It builds upon having acquired a lot of very different skills. So you're still investing, putting the foundation so that you can have a more rewarding experience once you move into the specialization classes. An example I give my students, at the end of the semester, they do a demo and they take robotics where they have to program an autonomous robot in simulation. And it does interesting things. It's nice, but it requires everything you have seen up to that point. And so if you are not solid in and probability, which is something you learn in your lower division, you will never be able to program such a kind of robot in a effective way. So it's really building. There is no, you need solid foundations if you want to be successful in the more advanced topics. And second year is still part of where you build those solid foundations.
Well, thank you so much for sharing all of this advice. CSE is very popular right now. It does take a lot of work. So we really appreciate all the knowledge that you provided for our second year students. We will conclude this panel. Again, thank you so much for participating. We will be posting this video on our engineering advising website. So hopefully needed to go back, attendees can go back. But thank you so much again for taking your time.
Thank you.